When the husband found out about the group intimacy involving his wife and 5 men, he could have lost his temper and exploded with rage. But he chose a different solution, and it amazed everyone. Check out this story to see how he handled that challenge and what happened next. I want to tell you a story that happened to me in real life a few years ago. I was married at the time. But what I had found out about my precious wife left me no choice at the time. And now on a bachelor, as corny as it sounds, I met my ex-wife Margarita on the dating site. We met once, met twice. I was quite comfortable with her. And most importantly for me, there was something to talk about. Our meetings gradually became more and more soulful. And at one point, I suggested she start living together. Being together with this, Rita also suited me, and I asked her to marry me. We got married. Sometime later, we had a daughter in general. Days went by. By days, months by months. 2 years passed, and it was little by little time for my wife to get out of the maternity leave. However, almost just before going to work, she said she quit. So she had nowhere else to go. Well, never mind. Let the extra year to babysit. I fought then. But as it turned out, the reason for such behavior at the end of maternity leave was quite different. A couple of months after talking about the work, my wife began to literally change before my eyes. The restrained relationship with her mother suddenly became supposedly perfect on every convenient and inconvenient occasion. My wife was eager to visit her mother without ever dragging me there with her. Much to my surprise. As it happens in other such stories, my wife, just like all the other heroines of such stories, began to spend hours in front of the mirror to answer intimate questions with silence and all in the spirit. I guess it's some kind of special shredder's firmware. And when another man shows up for his own, this typical program for all shredders is turned on. Well, not the point. I was young then, as they say, and hot, and in response to my wife's behavior, not only did I not suspect anything, but I tried to understand my other half. Perhaps she is so tired of life or child troubles. I fought then and offered to take her on a trip abroad there to get some fresh air. Not only their bodies, but above all heads. However, her response to my proposal rather cleared my head. Well, let's do it this way. You go on your own and I'll go sometime later. I go to the bar. What news? I thought then. And from that moment, I began to suspect something wrong. And that very trouble only gained momentum over time. While she was in the shower, I occasionally looked at her phone, but there was absolutely no crime. Of course, I did not find. But apparently the lack of experience of my wife in adultery eventually still took her and let her down. And such were the cases of correspondence and social networks. When I was in a room on the horizon, his wife defiantly, allegedly, accidentally got up and left for 10 minutes in the kitchen. As I understand it now, so that I could easily and quietly read any of her correspondence in social networks. Of course, it was totally clean. But no matter how much rope to see and the end to be, and once I went to her common laptop in the history of the browser to find their previously closed page, I suddenly saw that the history has been cleared. I don't recall clearing anything. And I purposely went to several sites on the internet and wrote down which ones going into the same browser on my laptop the next day. I found again that the history was clean. I do not want to say anything about all women on earth, but think about it. How many of you know people whose main and first thought in life is only to clear the history in the browser every time after itself, especially among women here? And I know such people a little bit. Not a single one. The computer is the key. I think this is clear to everyone. But how to get out of there? All the things I seem to have to be interested in. The computer is clean, and the wife, of course, will not say anything in general. Scouring the internet, I found nothing worthwhile and therefore took the computer to my acquaintances, specialist. Well, there you go. They sat in a service center and explained that when you press the 3 keys and after entering my special password, the program will take screenshots of the entire screen and everything that happens on it, but only for the first 30 minutes. That's probably enough for me. I told them, and after a couple of days, I was almost speechless. When I went into the program and looked at what my wife was up to, I cringed before my wide-open eyes flaunted her secret email in which she conducted all these correspondence. To be precise, there were 5. From the correspondence, I learned that she had long been as if divorced, and that these 5 knights of the deer were ready to take her in and support her only for her beautiful and long legs. She pampered them with pictures like this too, knowing how to tease them and hint that there might be no more sequels like the last one. You have to hand it to Margarita. All 5 of the guys were, at least, judging from their conversations, fairly well-off citizens, and judging from her impressions that I had read about the expensive restaurants, they had already quite confirmed their income to this. Right. Anyway, I was sitting in front of my laptop and didn't even hear the front door of the apartment open behind me. My wife had come. What to do? I got up from my chair, but suddenly I thought that a scandal would make no sense. She knows perfectly well that sooner or later I will find out. And accordingly, scandal is in her plans and she is sure she is ready for it. What then is to be done? Flashed through my mind, but my wife's next question immediately told me everything and prompted me. You won't have 1,000 in debt? Margot asked me, and I suddenly remembered that she's unemployed and income-less, plus those 5 friends of hers. She was obviously chosen for their large salaries. It remains to be that this will be her weakest point in giving money to my beloved wife. I immediately helped, but also with my calculation in such good spirits. My wife became talkative later in the night and right after that, which usually happens at night. I waited until she fell asleep and took a picture of her and myself next to her without a face. In the morning, I photographed our marriage certificate, put the newspaper with the date on our own bed, photographed her, and already from my mailbox, sent all these pictures to all 5 comrades. And as I understood from their expressions afterwards, to take a divorced man lying to themselves and to her husband with a so-called trailer was not desirable among them. And that same evening I had a conversation with my wife. Pulling the cat by one place is not my habit. And as soon as I brought all her secrets to these 5, I also advised her to go to her mother. The apartment was and is mine. It was bought before the marriage, and accordingly the only thing my wife is allowed to take is her washing machine. But only if there will be something to pay for the work of the movers. That's pretty much how it worked out. She for some time still asked to give her this laptop, apparently, and a telephone has kept contacts of not all this 5. But she does not know yet that its message to them will not make any sense because before it to them already contacted me. I want to tell you a story that happened to me quite recently a year ago. I was in complete shock when I accidentally found out that my wife was cheating on me. But the way I found out about it surprised me even more. It all started when I decided to play a joke on my wife and texted her about the fire. But what happened next? I could not even assume. In this video, I will tell you how fire revealed my wife's secret and how I reacted to it all. Don't miss it. It will be very interesting now that I have moved on a bit from what happened and have put all the events in my head, so to speak, in chronological order. I am ready to share my original story of cheating with you as well. I met Anastasia when I was 27 and she was 23. She was working as a manager at a real estate agency. Introducing Nastia is easy. Red hair, cute looks, and a very high degree of socialization. It seemed that Nastia could literally find common ground with the devil himself and in her profession as a realtor. This quality helped her greatly. As it turned out later, she was often helped out not only at work, but more of that later. In general, we began to meet and fairly quickly married. She was a newcomer from a small town, not far from ours, and I had lived and grown up and now worked here in a bigger city. I must say that for my friends, the news of the wedding was a shock. Nastia and I had only been dating for a couple of months at that point. But the thing was, when talking to her, I got the feeling that we knew her half our lives and I mistook it all for any of them at the time. Anyway, after the wedding, she moved in with me. We hadn't thought about having kids at the time, and as I understand it now, thank God Nastia loved noisy companies. She had a lot of friends, apparently during her college years. She had time to get acquainted with all, so to speak. Now I come to the point of my story. The starting point for my divorce with her was one Friday night. It was, as I remember it now, November. Why do I remember? I hadn't had time to change the tires on my car from summer to winter. It was warm that year and there was no snow for a long time. And I drove my car very little that November. In short, in our town. Turns out to be a friend of Nastia. Came to her city from her hometown, either to visit friends or with her boyfriend in general. The point is that in the evening her wife goes to meet her in a cafe. I basically gave her my blessing and was glad that this time I was not dragged there myself. I wasn't too interested in her friends, and at such meetings when they dragged me there to get acquainted with friends, after literally half an hour, I felt there, to put it mildly, superfluous. Friday evening, my car is parked in the yard without tires. Tomorrow is Saturday. I'll probably be late, but you call me. My wife said I can give you a lift. I have no rubber, and it rained in the road as a bad thing. Well, instead of snow. And then it got below zero and everything turned to ice. It's not safe to drive now. I'll call you a cab, okay? I was expecting her to say something at this point, like, okay, as usual, but no, she said okay. My wife told me the address of the cafe and I called her a car through the cab app on my phone. She got ready, kissed me on the cheek and drove off. I had already gone to the kitchen, got my dinner out of the fridge, and while I was eating my dinner in the kitchen, I decided to turn on some video on my phone. I unlocked my phone and there was an